For whatever reason, sodas and GMTs just seem to go together. I mean, you got your Pepsis, you got your Cokes, even the occasional root beer or two. But have you ever seen a Dr. Pepper? Well, you have now. This is the new Jack Mason Dr. Pepper Strat-O-Timer, a limited edition collaboration between the two brands, making it not only the most Texas watch I've ever seen, but also one of the most perfect collaborations I've ever seen. Is there's true synergy here across multiple levels. And when you think about it, a watch like this makes perfect sense. Now, before we get to it, the watch I'm looking at today is a prototype that was lent to the channel by Jack Mason. But production is complete, and if it's not already up for sale on their site, it will be soon. The promotional tag is also up because Jack Mason said they'd send me a production unit later on. And if you didn't catch it already, I did say limited edition. This is limited to just 230 watches, which is an odd number, but it will make sense later. Regardless, if you're interested in this one, look into it sooner than later, because their last limited Strat-O-Timer, the Joker, sold out pretty quick. Now, since I've already reviewed a regular Strat-O-Timer, this isn't going to be a full detailed review. So if you want all the nitty-gritty details, I'll have a link to that one down below. I'll give you a quick recap in a second, but I want to focus more on why this collaboration makes so much sense, as it is part of what makes this watch special. And then I'll go over the specifics about what's different here. So, recap time. Now, Jack Mason is a brand that's been around for about a decade. They're a Texas brand that's based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, as am I, and as is Dr. Pepper. And late last year, their Strat-O-Timer was one of the very first watches announced to use the new Miyota 9075. Citizen's True GMT or Traveler's GMT movement. The introduction of that movement was a huge deal, as it introduces that True GMT functionality at a price point it's never been before. Typically at this price point, you'd see Caller's GMTs, not True or Traveler's GMTs. The main difference between the two is that a True GMT has an independent jumping hour hand, whereas with the Caller's, the GMT hand is independent. Seems like a small thing, and honestly it kinda is, but it does make a difference, as it makes one more suited to those who are actually traveling, and the other more suited for someone who just wants to track a second time zone and stay in contact with someone in it. Now, in my review, I liked having that True GMT functionality in a reasonably priced watch. The Strat-O-Timer is well made, and I like the look of their Americana colorway. But what I really loved about it was just how it wore. For me and my wrist with its 40mm mini turtleish type case, the Strat-O-Timer is extremely comfortable, which really is one of the most important aspects of a travel watch. I go into more detail in the full review, but that's really the short version. And like I said, I really want to talk more about why this collaboration makes sense, and it does so on 3 different levels. The first is the Texas connection. Jack Mason is a Texas-based brand, and their goal is really to be the microbrand of Texas. To the point, they've even started adopting some Texas identity into their design language. And if that's their goal, it only makes sense to collaborate with another Texas-based brand. But Dr. Pepper isn't just any Texas-based brand, it's an icon. Dr. Pepper is just as Texas as the Cowboys or the Rangers, maybe even more so because it predates them. The only thing more Texas than Dr. Pepper is like Chuck Norris or maybe Willie. And saying Dr. Pepper's an icon may even be an understatement, because if you're not from or you haven't spent a lot of time in Texas, it's kind of hard to understand just how big a deal Dr. Pepper is here. And maybe that's one of the biggest things going against this watch, is that it's really regional. If you're not a Texan or a Dr. Pepper fan, you're just not going to see the appeal. But the thing is, it's not just that Texans love their Dr. Pepper. It's that Dr. Pepper is really an integral part of the state. In fact, I got this at the Dr. Pepper Museum down in Waco. Yes, there's a Dr. Pepper museum. And if you go to Texas-based restaurants or the state fair that's going on right now, you'll see things like Dr. Pepper shakes, Dr. Pepper ice cream, Dr. Pepper funnel cakes, Dr. Pepper infused barbecue sauce on burgers. It's anywhere and everywhere. I mean, you can still order a Coke at Whataburger and they will give it to you, but they will silently judge you while they do it. Seriously, I could go on and on with examples, but bottom line, it doesn't get more Texas than Dr. Pepper. So it's huge that Jack Mason could do this with them. And it also makes perfect sense from a watch design standpoint. And that's the second level, the GMT connection. So, story time here. Now, months ago, I went over to Jack Mason to return their Strat-O-Timer prototype. And while I was there, I was talking to Peter, who's their creative director and designer. And I told him, I got this crazy idea. You know, with GMTs, there are Pepsis, there are Cokes, there's root beers. You guys are a Texas brand, and a Texas brand should have a Dr. Pepper. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what it would look like, but no one else has done it before, and I think it'd be something really cool. And Peter just looked at me and smiled and said, "Did I already tell you about that? Because we're already working on it." Which just goes to show you that this idea makes perfect sense. Soda nicknames for GMTs have been around forever, since GMTs. And I'm surprised no one's really made a Dr. Pepper before, or called a Hulk a Mountain Dew. But the coolest thing here is that they're going a step beyond just an inspired colorway, and that this is a full-blown collaboration with Dr. Pepper. I mean, as far as I know, no one's done that with Coke or Pepsi before. Now, the third and last level of synergy actually lies within Dr. Pepper's own history, as one of their oldest and longest running ad campaigns was all about time. The actual slogan was "Drink a bite to eat at 10, 2, and 4, which does sound odd. But the idea behind it was that those were the times of day people needed a quick pick-me-up. So it was all about time. And they even made promotional wall clocks to remind people about it. Now, these days, many have forgotten about the 10, 2, and 4. But for Dr. Pepper fans, it's iconic. It's the name of their collectors club. It's inspired hit song lyrics, as well as still appears on retro-style bottles today. So again, it makes perfect sense for Dr. Pepper to do a collaboration with a watch company, just to tie all that history into it. And for some Dr. Pepper fans, it's cool to have a well-made modern watch that brings some of that back to life as well. But let's get back to the watch itself. Now, for the most part, the Dr. Pepper Strat-O-Timer is just like the regular Strat-O-Timer. It's just with some minor changes that make it special, including a few Easter eggs that tie into Dr. Pepper's history, like the fact that only 230 will be made, which ties into the 23 different flavors that make up Dr. Pepper's formulation. On the back of the watch, you also have a Dr. Pepper rotor. You have that 10, 2, and 4 slogan, as well as a one of a kind, which was another ad campaign right before the watch's ID number. There's also some special edition packaging, which unfortunately I didn't get any good shots of. And then you have the coolest Easter egg of all, which is the loom. Again, it's all back to that 10, 2, and 4, as when the lights go out, those indices glow green with Superluminova C3, while the rest have a blue BGW9. However, the biggest difference between this and every other Strat-O-Timer is going to be its dial and bezel combination, which takes its inspiration directly from Dr. Pepper itself. And I'm sure it's also what you've been staring at this whole time. The dial is a sunburst black with the nice wedged indices, something used in a few other colorways. But here it is paired with a vibrant yellow secondhand. Easily stands out, and while yellow isn't used much these days, it has been a color used in Dr. Pepper's past. Then you have the bezel, which is completely unique to this colorway. At the top, you got Dr. Pepper's signature red, which is then paired with a cola-colored brown bottom, all with old radium-colored numerals spread throughout. It's an interesting combination, and it kind of comes across as a mix between a standard root beer and Jack Mason's previous espresso version, which coincidentally I think was the first of their colorways to sell out. And while I'm pretty sure the bezel's knurling is the same with all the other colorways, I can't help but look at it here as just a little more bottle cap-like. Now, I'm a fan of the Strat-O-Timer in general. I think it's one of the best 9075 GMTs I've seen. In general, they're good-looking, well-made, and extremely comfortable. And I'm also a big Dr. Pepper fan, so no surprise that I'm in love with this entire concept. And overall, I did like what they wound up doing with it. It's sharp, easy to read, and unique, yet also somewhat subtle, which I think is a good thing to have in a travel watch. However, I do still have some comments and nitpicks I gotta throw in here. First off is the bezel color combo, and I'm guessing I'm not gonna be alone in this. Because when I first heard of a Dr. Pepper watch, I was thinking it'd be this red maroon color combined with white. Something more like their current branding. That's what I was expecting. So when I first saw this one, I was a little bit confused and actually asked where this brown comes from. And it turns out that's the closest color they can get to the drink itself. So, makes sense. But I still wonder what a red-white combo would look like. If they'd gone that route, I think it might be more recognizable. It may be too vibrant and flashy, and perhaps too tropical. Whereas with this one, it's more in line with, say, a typical root beer, just done a little bit differently. And it's also a bit more subtle, which I think is better suited for a travel watch, as well as something you'd wear every day. And in some ways, maybe even a little more refined. Honestly, I'm kind of torn on if that would have worked better or not, but let me know what you think down below. And along the same lines, I kind of question if there's enough Dr. Pepper stuff here. And I can see some others asking that as well, because there's only really a few minor tweaks to the regular Strat-O-Timer. Now, I think there's a fine line and a balance they needed to maintain just to keep this as an everyday watch. And overall, I think Jack Mason did a good job with it, as I really wouldn't want Dr. Pepper branding thrown all over this thing. So I like that it's their standard watch with just a few small touches, and it doesn't come across as cartoony or goofy at all. That again, it's something I could easily wear every day, and I think that's really the key here. But I still think that there may be some missed opportunities, like with the second hand. Perhaps they could have changed the counterweight to something more Dr. Peppery in colors, or maybe even changed it to look like a small bottle. Nothing major, nothing drastic, just kind of a small subtle nod. As well as the dial itself. Now, don't get me wrong, the black here looks fantastic. But I also look over at my Glacier Seiko, and I wonder if they could have done something similar, but made it look like fizzy bubbles. I know that's probably a long shot, and probably would have raised the price a bit, but I still wonder. I also wonder if this is too regional in terms of who'd be interested in it. That you either got to be a Texan or a big Dr. Pepper fan, and the rest of the world's just going to be confused. In fact, the rest of the world's probably already changed the video and is not watching this. But I also understand that's why it's a limited edition. This is something more for their existing fans and existing base. And the last thing is that limited edition part. Now, I know why they're doing it, and in a lot of ways I fully agree with that. Especially since this is a licensed collaboration, as there's gotta be some end to it to make it special. But at the same time, I'm just a little disappointed that there won't be more Dr. Pepper representation in the watch world. And I hope that this isn't the last Dr. Pepper watch I see in the wild, even if it's just a color combo and not a full collab. I'd love for it to become just as much a standard as Pepsi or root beer, because Lord knows it tastes better. Bottom line, cool watch, and I think one of the best ideas for collaboration I've seen. If you're a Dr. Pepper fan, a Jack Mason fan, check it out. But let me know what you think about it down below. The watch, the collaboration, and ultimately, if you'd like to be a Pepper too. Come on, you know how to throw that in there somewhere. And as always, you guys know what to do down below. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.